Okay, so today we would pay attention to uh, the verses. We had done the Madhusudana commentary up till verse number 55. Today we'll try to cover the Shankara Bhashya, which would be mostly repetition, so it will be very easy to sort of move faster. But there is a bit of discussion in the verse number 50, and that's why I'm looking at it, and then we'll try to finish up to 54 today. So Siddhim Prapto Yatha Brahma Tathapnoti Nibodhame Samase Neva Kaunteya Nishta Jnanasya Ya Para. So this is the introductory statement. So Bhagavan has already explained everything, that those who are anatma jnas, those who haven't had that understanding of the self as to what it is, they will have to do their swadharma and shvakarma. They'll have to do their antakarana siddhi, and they'll graduate slowly, and they'll reach that ultimate destination of Atmagyana after having a Suddha Antakara and Vairagya, and then they will do Sravana Manana Nididhyasana and Vedanta Charsha to reach there. However, the ones who have already reached there, how will do that once they reach there? He's explaining there. Siddhim Prapto Yatha Brahma Tathapnoti Nibodhame. How do they get that Atmagyana? I'm going to explain to you in detail. Arjuna hasn't reached there. Samasenia. I'm going to speak it to you, tell it to you in a very succinct form, because I have already discussed it in so many chapters. But we are in the last chapter. He Kauntiya Nishta Jnanasya Yapara. So, what is that attitude that you need to have? Bhagavan has mentioned that several times. He's summarizing it here. Siddhim Praptaha Swakarmana Ishwaram Sam Abhyarcha. So, what is that siddhi? They're getting it. They will do their swakarma, swadharma, whatever is they're calling their social, economic responsibilities, family responsibilities. Tat prasadazam, that particular thing, that siddhi which is born out of this nishkama karma yoga, kaya indriyanam. So they control that kaya and indriyas, the body and the senses. Jnana nishta yogyata lakshanam siddhim praptaha. So because of this nishkama karma, the people kind of mature to a level where they have control and discipline their mind and their senses. That kind of a perfection they have. Siddhim prapta iti tad anuvada uttarartha. And this siddhim prapta, this is a kind of intermediate situation. This is mentioned because what they will do, the jnana nishta, it is linked with that. This is a pre-qualification. King tad uttaram yadartha anuvada iti uchyate. What is that next thing? Because of which you said this is a kind of a translation. It's just mentioned here. यथा येन प्रकारेण ज्ञान निष्ठा रूपेण ब्रह्म परमात्मनम आपनोति तथा तम प्रकारम ज्ञान निष्ठा प्राप्ति कर्मम क्रमम मे मम वचनात् निबोध त्वम निश्चयेन avadharaya iti etat. Bhagavan is saying this anuvada I'm mentioning because once you have that siddhi, antakarana suddhi, that purity of your mind, the way jnana nishta rupena brahma paramatman apnoti, a particular sadhaka gets that paramatma jnana, this is a real self-realization. And what is that technique? What is that process? I will tell you. Mama vachana, from my words, I'm summarily saying twang nishchayana avadharaya. With certainty you accept that and internalize, because you have to work on them in future. Once you succeed in this particular Nishkama Karma Yoga, which I'm advising that you have to do your duties to graduate to the next level. Kim vistarena na iti aha samasena eva sankshepena eva he kaunteya. So Bhagavan doesn't want to go again giving a long lecture, and therefore he says that I'm going to tell you in very few words, limited words, what is that jnana nishta which you have to embark on once you have done this leg of your Nishkama Karma Yoga. यथा ब्रह्म प्राप्नोति तथा निबोध इति अनेन या प्रतिज्ञाता ब्रह्म प्राप्तिः ताम इदन्तया दर्शयितुम् आह निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा इति. Now, it's like somebody is giving you some abstract ideas as to a manager or somebody, there is some project or some restructuring your organization. So he's trying to ask you to do something in a new way. What does he do? He gives you a lecture, explains you the theory about how it is supposed to be done. Then he does it. It's done like this. That is idantaya. So Bhagavan is now, it's like giving it to him with a very personal touch and explaining this is how it happens, this jnana nishta. Idante, it's here and now. Understand this. Darsayitumaha nishta jnanasya ya para iti. That ultimate sadhana, that ultimate means to realizing the self, I'm going to explain to you. Nishta paryavasanam parisamaptihi iti etat. And why that nishta is mentioning? Because at the end of it, once you are atmajnana, there is no further nishta, and Madhusudan explained that, right? There'll be nothing more to do. You'll become kritakritya. Whatever has to be done, you already done it. Kasya, and of what? Brahmagyanasya ya parisamaptihi. Because once you have Brahmagyan, there is nothing more to be achieved. And then the sadhana kala is over. There is nothing more to achieve in life. Kidrisisa, what is that jnana? That paragyana that you're going to get? Yadrisam atmagyanam. That particular nishta, Brahmagyanasya ya parisamaptihi. That parisamapti, what is that parisamapti? Yadrisam atmagyanam. When you get that atmagyana, okay, and what is that nishta? It's exactly like atmagyana itself. Kidritat, what is that atmagyana? How is that? Yadrit, yadrisaha atma. That atmagyana, you see, he is now fusing down, dissolving the separation between the knower, the process of knowing, and the known. It's just these two, three words. Shankaracharya is beautifully doing it. What is that nishta, which is sadhana to reach there? He's saying it's exactly like atmagyana. How is that atmagyana? It's like atma, he's saying. That means the jnatavya padartha, what you are trying to understand, and the process of understanding, and that understanding, that jnana, there are just one thing. That is end of tripiti, the tripartite division between the knower, the process of knowing, and the known. He's saying actually it's one. Why? Once you have Atmajnana, you don't exist as an individual with a mind. You will have that tadakara vritti and atadvyavritti. You will reject everything else. You'll only understand the Brahman. And at that condition, you are not somebody with a mind and ego and a self and this and that. Ultimately, you are already dissolved in that absolute truth. Kidrisaha also yadrusa bhagavata ukta upanishad vakyehi cha nyayatah cha. And how is that? How do I make sense of that? How is that atma? Atma is equal to atmajnana. Atmajnana is equal to atmanishta, the jnana nishta. So the pramana, prameya, right, and pramata, you're saying one of the same thing, and he's explaining it. It's like the way it's explained in the Upanishads, and also with some bit of logic, yukti tacha. No, no, Vishayakaram Jnanam, na Vishayo, na pi akaram and atma, ishyate kochite. Now he's saying that when you try to know something, you want to know about this pen. Okay, that's the pen example we have. So this is the Vishaya of my Jnana, this is the object of my understanding. Now, can I have knowledge about something which doesn't exist or I cannot see it? How can I aspire to have knowledge of something which I don't see? So, jnana is always having vishayakarata. There is some sadakara vritti. You want to know a pen, that mind goes, connects with it through your NGS, then it takes the shape of that pen, they say. And then you have that is kind of reflected in your Chidabhasa. And the Sakshi Chaitanya, illuminates it, and you know this is a pen. That is the whole process of knowing, is for Vedantic understanding of it. However, this jnana, to have any vritti, tadakar vritti, you require a tat, you have an external reality or anything. But the Atma is not about anything. It is just itself. So how can you have Atma jnana? Why? Because it says, no akaravan, Atma doesn't have a shape, it's niravayava. And then how can you try to get it? Api akaravan atma ishyate kuchit, how can you know it? And then there is a ekadesi. There is something called ekadesi. It's a guy who is not perfectly understanding Vedanta, but is very excited. He says a few things in a conversation. It's like a teenager sitting and trying to join the conversation of dad with the uncles. He's saying, Nanu aditya varnam bharupaha swayam jyotihi iti akara vatvam atmana shuyate. There are few Upanishad sentences. Atma ka to hai rupa, aditya rupaha, aditya varnam, bharupaha, swayam jyotihi. These are all things to be seen through the eyes. And these words are there in Upanishads. And that Purvapakya, that defense lawyer, who is here essentially a Nyaya guy, who is challenging the Vedanta, is saying, no, don't talk like this. Tamarupatva pratisedhartatva tesam vakyanam. These kind of sentences are mentioned, because there could be a possibility that you might confuse the Atma as something which is abhava, the absence of something, or it's darkness. It's like andhakara. And therefore, in order to distinguish it from andhakara or darkness, the bharupa, swayam jyoti words are used. Doesn't mean Atma is actually jnana vishaya. It's just to remove some ignorance. Dravya gunadi akara pratishethe, because the Atma doesn't have a dravya, it's not an object, it has no qualities, it's nirguna. Akara pratishethe atmanah tamarupatye prapte tat pratisedharthani. Because there is a fear that you are saying that it is nirvikara, nirguna, nirvishaya, niravayava. So somebody might think, yeah, maybe it's like darkness. Darkness, do you know, if you look at darkness, andhera, it's niravayava, it doesn't have a physical form. Okay, and then all these things will apply. So that could be confused, and therefore the Upanishad says that it is Swayam Jyoti Bharupaha Aditya Varnam. Not to say that Atma can be Vishaya, is something which is Indriya Gochara, or Jnana Vishaya. No. Ityadi Vakyani Arupam iti cha Visheshato Rupa Pratisedhat. Atma is Arupa, without a particular shape, without any dharma. Therefore, how do you know it? How do you reach that Atma? Avishayatvacha, and then it is never the Gochara Vishaya. It's not like a pen or pencil you can see with your eyes, because it's mentioned several ways that you cannot touch that. It's not Indriya Gochara. Na sadruso tishtati rupamasya na chakshusa pasyati kasyanenam. Nobody can see that in Sweta Sutra Upanishad. It says there is nothing comparable with the Atma. And this dharma and the rupa, the appearance, the eyes cannot see it. Asabdam, asparsham, that is also there in Kathopanishad 1.3.15. And therefore, the Atma is absolutely not an object of knowledge. So why should we waste our time? So how do you argue that this Atma Jnanam? Sarvami yad visam jnanam tattad akaram bhavati nirakara cha atma iti uktam. Jnanat manoh cha upayoh nirakaratve katham tadbhava tadbhavana nishta iti. So this defense lawyer, that guy, the doubting Thomas, is asking, so shape of that object, then you know it. Nirakara cha atma iti uktam, and it is repeating that jnana atmano cha ubhayoho nirakaratve. The jnana doesn't have a physical form. Atma doesn't have a physical form. And you're talking about atma jnana. Neither jnana has a physical form, nor atma has a physical form. So you're just wasting our time. Katham tad bhavana nishta. Then you're saying I should be atma jnana nishta, that jnana nishta. But jnana is difficult to understand, atma difficult to understand, and you are saying you should persevere, you should be established in that. Doesn't make any sense to me. The professor of Vedanta, the Atma Jnani, Acharya Bhagavan himself is saying, no, don't get disheartened, it's not like that. Atyanta nirmalatva swachatva sukshmatva upapatehe atmanoho buddhecha. Atma samanir Atma sama nirmalyadi upapate avatva upapatihi. Atma sama nirmalyadi upapate avatva upapatihi. So he's saying how Shankaracharya is trying to throw some light. Then you're saying we will try to have Atma Jnana. Both are niraveva, difficult to touch, difficult to feel. So we are just wasting our time. He says, look here, it happens like this. Atma, these things you can see both in the self, Atma, also in the buddhi, the intellect we have. So Atma Sama Nirmalyadi Upapattehe. So of the buddhi also, the intelligence we have, it also kind of imitates these good qualities. And therefore, in this buddhi, the Atma gets reflected. That is what he's trying to say. The buddhi has the ability. It's also Ati Sukshma. If you clean it, remove Ragadvesha, it becomes Ati Nirmala, Ati Swachha. It's like a beautiful mirror, very flat, very good Belgian mirror. It can reflect the self. That's what I'm saying. बुद्ध्याभास मनः तदा भासानि इंद्रियाणि इंद्रियाभासः च देह अतो लौकिकैः देहमात्रे एव आत्मदृष्टिः क्रियते. Now he's extending the whole thing. The mind, that chidabhasa, this buddhyabhasa, the mind is paribhasita, reflected. Okay. And then tada bhasani indriyani, and this indriyas, the senses, and they appear with the help of this manas. Indriya bhasa is a deha, and the body. You can know there's a body because the indriyas are there. We are speaking, we're smelling, with anything. The activities are there. Atma drishti, and therefore the atma is reflected in the buddhi, the manas, the mind, that is reflected in that. The manas gives some sort of a appearance to the senses, because senses without the mind cannot do anything. And then the senses give some relevance to the body, because without the indriyas or the senses, the body cannot do anything. So ultimately, was the grossest object in which these things are reflected, that alone is true for us, because we are dull-minded. So laukikehi, so the normal people who are not too much of shastra nishta, they chaitanyavadinah cha lokayatikaha chaitanya vishishtah kayah purusha iti ahu tatha anya indriya chaitanyavadinah anya buddhi chaitanyavadinah. So he's quoting different groups of people who aren't able to understand the Atman as it is. They will look for proxies to talk about the self. For the Lokaya, the self. And for the other people, Chaitanya Vishishta Kayaha, the consciousness which is in the body, that is the Lokaya, the philosophy. And there are others who will say, no, the Indriyas, that is the proxy, that itself is the self. And then the others who will believe that the mind, the manas, that is the self. And others will say the buddhi, the intellect, that itself is the. So, if you look at this, some people are looking at the Annamaya Kosha, some people are looking at the Pranamaya Kosha, some people are Vijnanamaya Kosha, and they're confusing. Tatahapi antah avyaktam abhyakritakyam avidyavastam atmatvena pratipannaha kechid. And there are other people who confuse the Chidabhasa as the self, and he's explaining why that happens. Tatahapi antah avyaktam, that particular thing, that kutastha, which is getting reflected in your buddhi, and that is getting reflected. Abhyakritakyam, it's not visible, it doesn't have a fame, it's non manifest. Avidyavastam, then that is reflected because of the ignorance, that is in the Avjnana Avastha, Avidya Avastha. During that Avidya Avastha, that Siddhabhasa, that reflected consciousness, Atmatmena Pratipannaha Kechi. Some people confuse that is the self. I mean, is that particular thing, that Ahankara Mamakara, which is in the Sukshma Sarira, it's not in the self. So these guys confuse that Chidavasa, and they consider that Chidavasa to be the self. That is what he's saying. Sarvatra hi buddhyadi dehante atma chaitanya bhasata atma bhranti karanamiti. Bhagavan Shankaracharya is saying that whenever the atma chaitanya is getting reflected and you're confusing the proxies for the real thing, and that is the bhranti karana, that is the mother of all ills in our understanding. Atma vishayam jnanam na vidhatavyam. Therefore, please understand, there is nothing called Atma Jnana which is being prescribed, because it's not a matter of injunction, and that is how we confuse challenges again and again. Because there are a lot of Mimamsakas who will say that Jnana Karma Samuchaya will continue to do the Vedic ritual. There is no Vidhi in Jnana. Jnana is Swata Siddha Eva. You cannot prescribe, you do it. You want to go to heaven? Okay. Want to have a house? Okay. There can be some advice how to do it, how to do it. What kind of advice is there to know yourself? You just have to remove misunderstandings you have about yourself, and that is your self knowledge. You don't need anything extra. And therefore, he's clarifying that once you remove your misunderstandings, that is verily what you are. So, the whole labyrinth of wrong images that you have of yourself, once they are gone, the self is water clear to you. Therefore, he's explaining. So, there is no bidhi, there is no injunction, there is no advice. The advice is how to remove faulty understanding, anatma jnana. Atma ajnana nibriti. That in a cup full of muddy water, you throw away the muddy water, the diamond declares itself. You don't have to make the diamond; it's already there. You just have to find it. It's already there. How do you find it? Yeah, just remove the clay, the clay and the mud and everything. which is hiding that diamond. That is what is required here. Ataha Atmavisham Jnanam na vidhatavyam, not be prescribed. Kingtari, what to do? Nama Rupadi Anatma Dhyaropana Nibritihi. All these superimpositions. This mind is me, this body is me, this ego is me, this intellect is me, this emotion is me. No. You remove all that, what remains is you. Eva Karya na Atma Chaitanya Vijnanam. And then, what is Karya? What is not Atma Chaitanya Vijnanam, the realization of the self, that cannot be a goal because it's Swata Siddha, Avidya Adhyarupita Sarva Padartha Karehi, Eva Visishtataya Gruhya Manatvat, is that pure self, which is there in all of us. We have a tendency to see it in faulty ways because our mind looks what it is super happy with the package of the gift. It doesn't want to see what it is because we are more happy with the wrapper. We don't want to enter there. Once you enter there, you find yourself. अतएव हि विज्ञानवादिन बुधा विज्ञान व्यतिरेकेण वस्तु एव न अस्ति इति प्रतिपन्नः प्रमाणान्तरे निरपेक्षतां च स्वसंविदितत्व अभ्युपगमेन. So what he's now having, at least at one point, that's one thing is clear. Even the Vijnanavadis say, to know knowledge, knowledge has to disclose itself. You cannot have another way of knowing it. So Atma Jnana, how do you know? Like, for example, you know about this pen. So pen exists, how do you know that? Through which you know what the self is. That's not possible. So it has to be self-evident. So the Vijnanavadis, the Buddhists also say the same thing. Because everything is, they don't believe in Atma. Everything is Jnanatmaka. Everything is consciousness. Particular model of panpsychism. And then what they're trying to say, that there's no way to make sense by, there's no other way. It has to be self-evident. Otherwise, it doesn't take us a long way. Tasmad avidya adhyarupana निराकरण मात्रम ब्रह्मणि कर्तव्यम न तो ब्रह्म ज्ञान यत्न. ज्ञान के लिए कोई यत्न, some perseverance, some trial, some hard work. No, it's not required. Hard work is required to remove ignorance. Once ignorance is removed, but it's a very difficult thing to accept it because our mind has learned to think in a circuitous way, in a wrong way, and jumps around and identifies with other things instead of being self-aware, instead of trying to get back to itself and see the truth of its existence. That is the whole problem because it's always looking for a solution. I mean, that's very common in all of us, our lives. When we are not happy, what do? We call up a friend, we read a book, we see a film, we go to a park, we go to a temple or a church, or we go on a travel or anything. But we're looking, when we are lonely, what are we looking for? Good music, maybe a dress. But actually, if you sit quietly, what Vedanta says is the solution to your problem is not outside of yourself. Yeah, there are certain things which are about like your bed is broken, you have to replace your car. Those things are fine. You need a book, you have it. You need to fix a meeting and talk to somebody for business, that's fine. But that inner unhappiness, restlessness, cannot be removed by connecting, by replacing one mode of connection with another mode of connection. That's cheating oneself. That continues, that happens. We are all restless. And what Vedanta says is that these are ways in which we are postponing a meeting with oneself, meeting with what is that self realization. We just, and by understanding why we postpone, how we postpone, one, that devil, which is actually, it becomes very powerless when we know how it plays the game with us, then reaching ourselves become very easy. And Bhagavan will explain that very quickly. Avidya kalpita nama rupa vishesha akara apahrita buddhitvat. Our minds are hijacked. Like an addicted person is kind of moved by his addiction. He can do anything to get. It's kind of hijacked by what? Avidya kalpita, imagined by ignorance. Nama rupa vishesakara apakrita. All the time the mind wants to have vishesakara buddhi, like You want to have kalma jnana, you want to know about engineering, you want to know about physics. Remember, everything is non-self. Everything, everywhere you go is non-self. And the mind wants to go there, read books and talk to people, watch some talks on YouTube. Doesn't easily return to one. And that is the biggest challenge. And this is actually very subtle stuff. Therefore, Vak Atyanta Prasiddham Suvigyayam. Because, I mean, we are not distant from ourselves. We are refusing to look at ourselves. What is dearest, nearest to us? Ourselves. What we are looking for? Self knowledge. Where we can find it outside of us? No. But we do not want to reach ourselves. That's what I'm saying. Atyanta Suprasiddham and Suvigyam Asannataram, closest to us. Atma Bhutam, within us. Api, even then, Aprasiddham, we don't know what it is. Durvigyam, very difficult to understand. Atiduram, it's far away from us. Why? Our eyes are closed. Anyad ivacha pratibhati. Oh, that Atma Jnana is something I have to reach there. I'm looking for what is your trip in life? No, I'm studying Vedanta. For what? People who do not have they know that Atma Anatma Vastu Viveka. What is that thing which is the self? It's very difficult to reach there. And therefore, he's saying that we have to achieve it. That is what he's mentioning here. Bahyakara Nibritta Buddhinam chu. But those people whose minds are no more running around, they have come back to oneself. Their minds are not having external orientation. Those people, so Labdha Guru Atma Prasadanam, and they have gone to a Guru and they have Atma Prasada, they have that happiness, they have the self. Na ataha param sukham suprasiddham. That nothing. It becomes so easy for them. Duresha Antika, you remember in the earlier verse it was there. The Atma Jnana is very near for the guy who has a pure mind. And the other fellow doesn't know what is bhakti. He goes and looks at Lord Krishna, is a particular deity from. Can I buy some? He's looking at Bhagavan and he's thinking as if it's an idol. It's like a doll for him to play with. He wants to have one of these dolls in his drawing room. I mean, it's fine if you want to do it. But truth is not to look at the beauty of the idol. The idea is to connect with the Supreme Being, which is Lord Krishna, and looking at that symbol of him through which you are trying to. This is Pratikopasana. It's a Sakshat Vastu, but you know it through that. Through Omkara, you know about Brahman. Says. Therefore, he's saying it's actually very close, but it looks like it's too far away. Ataha param sukham suprasap suvigyam so asannam asti. There's nothing is nearer to us. Once our minds are these are spiritually oriented. Tatha choktam pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam. Now, why that vidhi cannot be there? Once something is clear, that is what is dharmya, that is what is mentioned. Okay. Kechito Panditamanya, some people who think they are very wise. Panditamanya is making fun of some people who think they are too intellectually rich. Nirakaratva Jnana Nishta iti. It's too difficult. And they are wise because that Atma is Nirakara, it doesn't have a shape. So don't waste time trying to meditate on it. You cannot reach there. It doesn't have a guru or acharya, and there is a no parampara. Many of the things, whether it is Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or any particular Dharma Shastra, unless there is a tradition when you are learning it, you will asruta Vedantanam, and he hasn't heard the Vedanta texts. Atyanta Vahir Vishaya Asakta Buddhinam, and his mind obviously is what? Externally oriented. House, car, friends, food, holidays, films, music. Samyak Pramaneshu Akrita Sramanam. And then he hasn't done any kind of, he hasn't done any perseverance. And Viparitanam. So the person, Tad Viparitanam, in case of Jnani, that means this is Agyana Buddhi, Bahya Buddhi, Opposite of this Bahya Buddhi, Viparitanam Jnaninam tu Laukika Grahya Graha Dvaita Vastuni Sadbuddhi Nitaram tu Dusampadyaha Atma Chaitanya Antarasya Anupalabdhe. Exactly different. For him, Grahya Grahaka, this is to get, this is what we should look for. He doesn't have interest in that. Sadbuddhi Nitaram, and his mind is all the time established in the truth. Dusampadya, anything other than Atma Chaitanya Vitirekena Vastvantarasya Anupalabdhehe, because he's so much established in the self. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Sarvam Vasudeva Miti, everywhere he sees Lord Krishna. And that kind of a person doesn't work out for him. That is what he's saying. Yathacha etad evam no anyatha it abochama. And that is what exactly is there for Uktam cha Bhagavata yasyam jagrati bhutani sanisha pashyato munehe. Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita that where everybody thinks that is their day, for the pashyata munehe, for the guys who are having those insight, for them it's darkness. That means what? This materialist guy is super happy because he's getting an opportunity to, have a cup of coffee or pick up a drink and talk to people. Super excited. However, this poor guy who's a Vedanti or he's into bhakti or he's a yogi, for him it's a nightmare because he is not in a mood to socialize with too many people. He has to do it. He's duty bound. Maybe it's a party organized by the company, so he has to show himself up. He's there, but he's not enjoying it. That is what he's saying. For somebody, it's a bad time for the guy. For him, it's all darkness. He doesn't see any lights. He says, "Where am I trapped? What am I doing here?" That kind of a thing. Tasmad Vahi, removing these faulty dualities from our consciousness. Bheda Buddhi Nivritti, that this is God, this is other people. This kind of duality we have to remove. Nahi Atma Nama Kasyachid Kadachit Aprasiddha is nowhere not known, is absent, anywhere, or any time. Aprasiddha Prapyo Heya Upadiyo va Atma is Prapya, I should get it. It's here, Upadya. Why? It's so prasiddha. It's very, very you yourself. Aprasiddhi tasmin atmani aswartha sarva pravritteha prasijaran. And then, if you consider that Atma is aprasiddha, if you admit that, tasmin atmani aswartha sarvaha pravritteha prasijaran, then you will say that, okay, I don't have that Atma Jnana, I don't have that Atma, and therefore anything which is other than that Atma, then I'll reject and look for that Atma. Imagine that Atma thing is like body or any Achetana thing. No, once you have that Atma thing, all Vyavahara thing, all the mental habits, orientations, connectivities, all to pieces, they vanish. Tasma yatha swadehasya parichedaya na pramanantara tad avagatim kya. Now, if somebody are you sitting, do you look for any proof that look here, these are the coordinates and I came from here, I must have reached here? No, you say I'm here and that's the proof. That's it. How do you know you're here? You say, no, this is the Google map, and you see the Google map says I have traveled here, and this is exactly. So, what is the coordinates for this location? And the Google map says I have reached. And we say that no, to accept what the self is, because that verily is yourself. YouTube, I can see it saying your internet connection is unstable. That's what he's saying. Is it also happening with the Google Meet thing? Yeah, it's saying the okay. So I don't know what to do. Maybe we can re-record it later on. Let's finish it, whichever. Yesam api nirakaram jnanam apratacham. And wherever that nirakara jnana is not directly there, eva jya avagatihi iti jnanam atyandam prasiddham sukhadivati abhyupagantavyam. And then those people for whom this knowledge, this awareness, this realization is without a physical form, and it's not through sense perception or pratyekya. And therefore, and for them, because more than anything, they want to know that Atma, and to know that Atma, that realization of the self, that knowing of that self, that Gaya, Bodha, it is dependent or sad. You say, I'm feeling happy or I'm feeling sad. You experience it directly. And similarly, that you exist, that also you experience directly. Then you should accept it. Don't look for another external proof because there's going to be a process of regression starting. Tatha, and then he's saying, Jigyasa, please understand that you are verily here. You just need a bit of good philosophical training, a bit of Guru Acharya Upadesha, and a bit of study of the Vedanta text to realize that this is not understand, provided you make some efforts. Aprasiddham ched jnanavat jigyaseta. Now, if you don't know something, like there is this pen. So let's imagine you're not sure of experience, and therefore this is what it is. Ataha atyandam internet is almost oscillating. It says it's reconnecting. I don't know what's going to happen to that YouTube thing. We have to look at it later on. Atyanta prasiddha iti. So the Atma is prasiddha, the Jnata, the knower. You are trying to know, you are also prasiddha. Tasmat jnani yatno na kartavya. There is no effort to be made to know the self, and there is no science or technology of knowing the self. All science and technology in Vedanta is all about removing ignorance and correcting the understanding we have. Once we correct the understanding, the self same Atma becomes self evident. Okay. Sa yam jnanasya paranishta uchyate katham karya iti. And therefore, he's saying how to do this jnana nishta, paranishta. He's explaining the verse number 51. Buddhya visuddhaya yukto dhrityatmanam niyamya cha sabdadin vishayang tyaktva ragadvesho vyudasya cha. Buddhya. So what is that? Buddhya adhyavasayatmika uh, buddhi. That nishchayatmika buddhi you have to have. Adhyavasayatmikaya vishuddhaya maya rahitaya. That buddhi should not be trapped, tainted, and influenced by the game of Maya and all this. You should be free from that. And what is yuktaha? Yukta can also mean that you are yoga yukta, but it here is saying samparnaha is sufficient, it's comprehensive. Dhritya means dharyena or sankalpena, whatever. You have that patience. Atmanam, karya karanam sanghatam niyamya. The Atma here is not Paramatma, the Paramarthika Atma. Atmanam means the mind. Many of the times you find whenever Atmanam is mentioned as kind of an object of your activity, mostly it's referring to the body or the mind. And then Atmanam, then you see the context, the prakarana. In what context it's used, then you know they're talking about the Paramartha, that particular Paramatma. So kritva, bharshikritya, visuddhya yukta, dhritya, atmanam niyamya. Atma cannot be controlled. It cannot be regulated. So obviously it's referring to the antakarana, manam. So manaha. So niyamya, karya karana sanghatam, body-mind complex. Niyamya cha, niyamanam kritva, bhashikritya, by controlling it, savdadin, savda adi. Savda adi yesante savdadayaha. That means all the external objects, vishayan tyaktva. You renounce them. Don't run away. You just have to reject their influence on you. Samarthyat. And then you have tyaktva, raga, dvesha. Then you have that with that ability. Sarira sthiti matran kevalana muktva tataha. That means you don't reject the whole reality. Then what will you drink? You can't get water or food because they'll become illusory for you. No, it's not about that. You try to adhikan sukharthan tyaktva. Whatever is sort of pushing you towards sense pleasure, you drop those interests in the external reality. Sarira sthiti arthatvena prakti shuta raga dvesho. Even for living your life, there will be this raga dvesha. I need this food or what I know. You just drop them. Parityajya cha. Okay. Now in the verse number 52. Tataha, then what is the next step? Vivikta sevilagvasi yatavakaya manashaha dhyana yoga paro nityam vairagyam samupasritaha. We have done this. There is only one particular thing we had discussed. It's made much more clearer in the end. That's why we look at it. Vivikta sevi is that you are looking for some physical isolation and some social and some physical distance. Aranya nadipulina Giri Guhadin. So he might go to a cave, he go to a mountain or a natural resort. He might go to a forest or a riverbank. Viviktan Deshan, and then he's isolated from others. Sevitum Shilam Ashyati Vivikta Sevi. He's interested to maintain some physical distance. Lagvasi, he doesn't eat too much. Lagvasi, Laghu asanashilaha. He eats very limited amount of food because if you eat more, you'll be that tamas will pick up and you feel lazy, you want to sleep. Vivikta seva, Vivikta Vivikta seva laghvasanayoha. So you have that Vivikta seva, staying away from people, eating less. Nidradi dosha nivartakatvena. Then you don't fall asleep. Your yoga can go on. Chitta prasada hetutva grahana. So that gives you a kind of purity and elation in the mind. Mind is always kind of very energetic, very agile because of that self-discipline. Yata vakaya manasha is explaining. Vakcha kaya cha manasam cha. Yat vakaya manasha samadhara dvanda manasam cha yatani sanyatani yasya. The guy who was controlled his ability that mono, vak and kaya, all that ability to speak, whatever his speech, his actions, and his body, his movements. He controls and his thoughts. Yatani sanyatani yasya jnananishtasya sa jnananishtaha yatihi yatnasila. That yatihi yatak vakaya manasa syat. Evam uparata sarva karmanaha san. And then he is withdrawing from all things. Then Swarupa Avasthana. He will continue to do his meditation. Dhyana Yoga Paro. What is the meaning of Dhyana Yoga Para? Very interesting. Look at it. Dhyana means Atma Swarupa Chintanam. It's not about sitting in meditation in the Buddhist way, like pure mind thing, Vipassana. These are all means to reach there. But the basic difference between the Vedantic and the Buddhist thing is that they say there is nothing called Atma, right? It's all purifying the mind. But here there is a lot of emphasis on know that, meditate on the Upanishadic texts, that the self is beyond and above all that, and it's all pervading, that Atma Swarupa Chintanam. And what is yoga? Is ekagrata. Atma Vishay eva ekagrikaranam. Then this dhyana, that meditation that you're having, that vichara, focus it on the self. Don't allow any distractions. Dhyana yoga paratvena kartavya. And that is the ultimate thing that you're interested in. Yasya saha dhyana yoga paraha. And this most interesting word here is nityam. Why is he using it? He's explaining. So nityam, what he says, why he's saying nityam, nitya grahanam, mantra japadi, anya kartavya bhava pradarsanartham. Somebody who is doing japa or doing an anushtana, is doing fasting. Is it nitya vairagya? No, for a couple of days. Today is Monday, so I'm not going to take non-veg, or I'm going to fast. Today is Amavas, so I'll go and sit in a river bank or to go to a temple. These are all naimittika vairagya sadhana. He's saying nitya vairagya, all the time detached. So it's not about mantra japa. That cannot give you the result of Atma Jnana Nishtha. So you have to have that as a general attitude. Vairagyam virago bhava, that detachment, drishta drishteshu visheshu vaitushnyam. You have a bit of loss of interest in the punya papa phala, going to swarga, and also drishta phala like house, car, money, fame, everything. Samyag upashrito in nityam ityarthaha, samupashritaha, established there. And then the verse number 53. Ahankaram valam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimuchya nirmamaha shanto brahma bhuyaya kalapati. Ahankaram. What is that? Ahankaram is ahankara deha indriyadishu tam balam, that particular thing. Okay, that is ahankaram. So you have that is part of the whole antakarana. You have that identification. I'm this is my mind, this is my house, this is that. What is valam? Valam we had discussed earlier also. Valam is not that basic strength of the physical body because you need it even to go to the river, to the temple. No, it's not about that. He's explaining samarthyam kama ragadi yuktam. That strength you have, the which is having something to do with passion, with your craving. So, which is very impossible. Like this guy called, I'm forgetting this guy, Bilwa Mangala, who was very obsessed with this quotation or something. And he crossed River Ganga or Yamuna, whatever, and reached there. Netramani or something, or was name. And this lady, how did you come here? He said, I'm thinking about you. He forgot that he's crossed over flooding Ganga. He says, think about it. If you could meditate on Krishna even for 2 days, your life will change. Then Bilwa Mangala dropped everything and turned to Lord Krishna. That is what he's mentioning here. So Samarthya, that power of that guy to cross over Ganga and go and reach that lady, that is Balam. Samarthyam Kama Raga Diyuktam Na Itarat. Sariradi Samarthyam Sohavikattvena Tyagasya Asakyatvat. Because whatever basic need of strength you need to survive, to do sadhana, that you cannot drop. Then you cannot do anything. Darpunama Harsantara Bhavi Dharma Atikrama Hetuhu. That we have discussed that we are super excited and you commit an error in judgment. That is what is Darpa, that that pride or whatever, that arrogance. Rishyati Dripyati Drishto Dripto Dharmam atikramati iti smaranatham cha. That is what he's saying. You're super excited, be careful. You might actually, overstep the code of conduct. Kamam, ichha, krodham, dvesham, parigraham. He's that explaining that. What is kamam? Is desire, craving. Krodham means dvesham. You don't get it, you are angry. What is parigraham? His parigraha also one has to leave. But parigraha for Ishvara, sarira dharana, sometimes you need it, but he's saying also drop it. What does it mean? Indriya managata dosha paridyagepi sarira dharana prasangena dharmanushtana nimittena va bahya paricha. So you want to do a yaga, you want to do a Vishwasanti Yajna, you want to do a Ganesh Puja or Durga Puja, you collect a lot of money. That is parigraha. You are a Vedanta, you should not get into all these things. I mean, it's not required. You do it, but too much of attachment. For Lokashankara, it's fine in the beginning. But too much of obsession with these things that I want to do the biggest Durga Puja, those things actually necessarily don't aid the search for oneself. Paramahansa Parivrajaka Bhutva, then you take that Vividisa Sannyasi. Deha Jivana Matri Api Nirgata Samabhava Nirmamaha. And then he doesn't even look at his body as mine, he's just living happy. Ateva Shantaha Uparataha. And therefore he has that mind in a state of equanimity. Yaha Sangrata Ayosho Yati. Is he doesn't do too much of physical work and then doesn't make any efforts to do any yajna or any tapasya or this and that. He's just quiet. He's put an end to all those karma kandas. Jnananishta Brahma Bhuyaya, Brahma Bhavanaya, to be himself, to know the self, Kalapate, Samartha Bhavati. That is 53. Let's look at one more verse, I think. Okay, we've just reached. Okay, so we have reached the timeline. We have 2 minutes. We'll do it. Brahma Bhutah Prasannatma Nasochati Nakankshati Samaha Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhakting Labhate Param. And that guy, having reached these crossover these stages, Brahma Bhutah, he's always happy. Prasannatma No Shochati Nakankshati. Doesn't bother about what he has lost. He doesn't crave for what he doesn't have. And then he's in a state of equanimity, samaha sarveshu bhuteshu. He sees everything as equal. Madhbhakting labhati param. He gets the paravakti, which is that jnana nishta. Because we have discussed that even in Madhusudana Saraswati, you have the artha, artharthi, jigyasu, and a jnani. He gets that jnani kind of thing. Brahma bhuta, Brahma praptaha. He gets the self. Okay, prashanatma. He has got some tattva darshan, and therefore, then labdha adhyatma prasada na shochati. He doesn't bewail over things. means. Na shojati kinchid artha vaikalyam atmano vaigunyam cha uddishya na shojati santapyate na kankshati. Okay, then he doesn't bother about it. Anything related to himself. Atma Sambandhi doesn't mean the pure self. It doesn't have any vaigunya, but anything like a bed which is offered to you in a relative's house is not very well made, or food you offered, you think they're doing it without much attention. He's not bothered about all this. Brahmabhutasya ayam svabhavah anudyate na shojati na kankshati. He doesn't look for anything. He doesn't, crib over what he didn't get. Nahi aprapta vishayakanksha brahma vidah utpadyate. So super excited if you give him something. You give him a latest model of iPhone. No, he just looks at it, keeps it on the table. Opam mina sarveshu bhuteshu sukham dukham va samam eva pasyati ityartha no atma samadarsanam iha tasya vakshamanatvad bhaktya mam abhijanati iti. Now he looks at everything and he sees somebody's happy, somebody's sad. He's not careless. He's not stoic. He's not, what do you call it, unresponsive. No, he's very empathetic. He's full of love. He doesn't get flustered or angry or sad or super happy looking at sukha dukkha. He sees everything as one. Why? Because these are all unreal. These are appearances. And he's saying the foundation of all this. These are all abhasas. They're appearances. What appears as sukha is not sukha. What appears as dukkha is not dukkha. Yeah, there's physical pain and there's physical pleasure. And that you have to accept. But we are looking at it in a certain context. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. He's not saying that they are seeing everything as Atma. Then Bhagavan has mentioned the next sentence that with this bhakti, that para bhakti, he knows me. That means if he has already seen the self everywhere, then that this is jnana nishtha stage. It's not that Atma jnana. Evam bhuta jnana nishto mad bhakti mai parameshware bhakti bhajanam param uttamam jnana lakshanam chaturthi lavate chaturthi. These are four kinds of bhaktis. But this guy, having purified his antakarana, having established himself in me, gets that parabhakti, and that parabhakti is actually a form of being aware of oneself. And I am no different from him. I never drop him from my embrace, and he never forgets me. That's what Bhagavan had said it, and that's how we come to the verse number 54. And then we'll do the verse number 55 and move forward along with Madhusudana tomorrow. So I'll put an end to the YouTube. Anyway, it was very unstable. And if any questions,